Chapter 19 of Moon Bear. It took me another 2 months after the incident with Cam and the ultrasound to dare to ask the doctor for time off. I brought threads of rolls of cloth for Ma with the money I earned from Mr. Stone, and had saved some money too. I wanted to go back home to see Ma. I watched the doctor through the window of his office. He'd been in a better mood lately. He was running a good trade. When people heard that General Chang's daughter was getting better, they wanted bile from the doctor's bile farm too. People came from treatments for stomach upset, sores, chills, and bruises. They came for almost anything. For some, it was the tonic, a good luck drink to be washed down with rice whiskey at a wedding. The Bear Farm had a tourist attraction. The doctor built a new toilet and turned the small office into a shop. He filled in some holes and some cracks in the concrete floors and repainted the rusting bars of the cages. Tourists arrived in mini buses with cameras to have their photos taken with the bears. The doctor would let them feed the bears fruits on the ends of sticks. He loved to taunt Bitter to lash out and show his strength. Bitter impressed people. His bile was the priciest of all, and the doctor would label some bottles with Bitter's name, though I suspect they didn't contain all his bile. People liked to take photos of Sudoku too. In those 2 months he'd grown from a wrinkly cub with a fat belly and stubby legs to a leaner bear cub, a miniature version of the bear he would become. I couldn't keep him in my room any more. He tried to chew the bed and the mattress and tear up the bolts of the cloth for Ma. I hated leaving him in the cage in the bear barn. He moaned and tried to reach me through the bars, or sit with his back turned, sulking and sucking his paws. I let him out of the barn when I was cleaning and feeding the other bears. He liked to follow me around and put his paws on the cage and sniff at the other bears, although I noticed he never went near Bitter. I managed to train him too, with sugared nuts I had bought at the market. I could make him sit and lay down and stay. I could make him reach up high, standing on his hind legs. I could make him snarl and bare his teeth and pat the front of his paws. All this just for the sugared nuts. I was relieved to be able to feed him the same food as the other bears. The milk was becoming too expensive. I kept one bottle of milk for night time, though. Then he'll curl up against me and try to crawl up into my lap, even though he was nearly as heavy as me. He'll drink his milk, making his cub-like humming noise. His coat was glossy and shiny. It was soft, especially over his head, and around his ears. When he stood on his hind legs, he came up to my chest. He was strong, too, much stronger than he looked. When the tourists came, he clamored for attention, for fruit and nuts. He let people put their hands through the bar to stroke him and scratch him and feed him fruits from their hands. "You see," said the doctor to the tourist group, "this small cub was orphaned and brought to me. See how strong and healthy he is? See how I saved him?" I stood back and watched. I didn't like how the doctor or the tourists feeding him. I didn't like them looking at him, prodding him, poking him around the ways that they cooed and clucked at him as if he were a small child. They just saw a bear cub. They didn't see the sores on his elbows and the back legs from lying on the bars. They didn't see the swallow abundance of Mama Bear's son, the way he groaned and grunted with each breath, or the bleeding gums of the bear's mouth where teeth had been cut out and filed. They saw what they wanted to see. Then they walked away and they would forget. I followed the doctor and the group of tourists to the office, where the doctor sold the bile in bottles, flakes, and powders. It was a big group, 12 Japanese tourists. The minibus had pictures of Laos painted along the side, of mountains and golden temples and the statues of Buddha. I watched the tourists climb back into their minibus and leave with their bile, a tonic for their way home. The clouds were low and heavy, and more rain yet to come. Cars had their night lights on, and the street lights were lit up. Even though it was not yet nightfall, I leaned against the door. The doctor was smiling, counting his money, letting the bills flip over in his head. I knocked on the door and he looked up at me. "The tourists like the bears today," he said. "Here, you have done well." He pushed a US dollar into the top pocket of my shirt. "Have this. See how generous I am?" "Thank you," I said. I stood facing him. It was now or never. He was the best mood I had seen him in a long time. "I was thinking of my family," I said. The doctor looked up. "Maybe I could have some time off to visit them?" I said. I started gabbling. "Just to see Ma and my sisters. It wouldn't be for long." The doctor's face clouded over. He turned away. "We are very busy here, Mountain Boy." "It would be at most 2 days. Maybe Asnag would feed the bears when I am gone." The doctor tapped his finger on the table. His face creased into a frown. "Do you have money?" My hands felt clumsy and cold, despite the heat. I didn't want him to know I'd earned some money from Cam's father. "Maybe I could use a little of the money you send to my mother to help me pay for the trip." The doctor took a deep breath in and it slowly let out. "Do you know how much it is to travel home?" I shook my head. "Do you know how much a bag of rice costs?" "No," I said, "but—" The doctor looked up sharply. "Then I suggest you stay and you work so your family can eat." He stood up, all the smile gone from his face. "Besides," he said, snatching up the keys to the motorbike, "I'm going to buy more bears. There will be more work to be doing here soon." I watched the doctor reeve out of the compound, his wheels spraying grit into the air. I stormed into the bear barn and pulled the sliding doors across, slamming them shut behind me. I flung Sudoki's cage open. He threw his paws on my shoulders. I shoved him up and walked away. He followed me. I tried to stuff into my pocket of fur honey nuts. I pushed him off again, and he looped off to explore between the cages of the other bears for food droppings by the tourists. The others were quiet, sedated by the drugs and the pressing heat of the day. Above me, raindrops started to patter on the iron roof. The sound seemed to be still for the bears. Bitter raised his head and looked upwards, licking his lips at the sound of water. I slid down against Sudoki's cage and closed my eyes. I thought of the rain in the mountains, the thunder on our roofs, turning the smallest stream into a mighty rapids. Thought of Ma. Had she managed to plant the rice or the vegetables? Was she even in the same house? It had been so long since I had seen her. I thought of Sudoki too. I had made a promise to him that I would always get him back to his home. I couldn't even get back to my own family. How did I think I would get back to Sudoki's, back in the forest too? The rain rose from the pattern of the steady drumming. Water crept underneath the sliding doors, burning the bright red mud. The rain hammered against the roof faster and faster. I couldn't think. I covered my ears and pressed my head to my knees. There was no way out of here. I was as caged as Loki and the bears. The rain stopped, and as suddenly as it began, I heard the high pitch. It was only then that I heard the high-pitched and terrified "Tam!" Again, the scream. I looked around by the sliding doors and I saw Cam sprayed on the floor. Sudoki was standing over him, paws on his shoulders, jaws wide open and stretched across Cam's face.